Join us at Women of Courage and celebrate the achievements of women. In the upcoming months, I am going to change our format significantly. This year we will exhaust 3 subjects: breast cancer in black women, voting, and the subjects for black men. Each of these ideas and subjects is essential for the black community. Our survival depends on the health of black women, our willingness to vote, no matter what, and the fortitude and determination of black males to develop. We might as well face it. The survival of any community depends on the mental and physical health of both the female and male. Children need both their father and mothers, and the community needs happy, substantial families to survive. No culture can survive without either. I want you to join me in our discussions. I want women to realize that the survival of their children is the only proof that they ever existed. Think about what I just said. Your children are the only proof that you ever existed on this earth. So when you are careless about your health and die before your time, the survival of your children is greatly reduced, because they will be placed in foster care where they can be abused mentally and physically. I want men to join in learning about breast cancer and try to save the lives of their mothers, sisters, aunts, cousins, and grandmothers. I want men to begin to listen to subjects that can greatly improve their lives. I am going to play certain speeches regarding the need to vote. There will be speeches of Obama, Stacey Abrams, and others. I am also going to discuss Shirley Chisholm, Constance Baker Motley. She is the first African American woman to ever become a federal judge. All in all, I hope you will enjoy the new format and be greatly encouraged in your life. Also, thank you for listening and growing with us. Before we begin, we're going to take a few moments to collect ourselves and to relax before we engage into our discussion. What we need to do is to focus now on bringing positive energy into our lives and into the world. The energy that we project every day is the same energy that we get back. We have all seen those people that can walk into a room and they glow. People want to be around them. People feel better being in their presence. That's the energy that we need to create. And once we learn how to do this, our lives will be filled with greatness. We will attract that positive energy, and how we can do this is by changing our outlook. Meeting every day with gratitude, thankfulness, optimism, and once you do this, you will see a change in yourself. I want you to take a moment and close your eyes. Think about everything positive in your life: family, friends, a career, your faith. All of this is how you start your day. Every morning when you wake up, I want you to think about what is positive in your life. I want you to list 10 reasons why your life is amazing. You will see the change. You will be changed. You will begin to attract life's blessings. Lead with gratitude. Be thankful and think positive.
This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
Today's video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. In just a moment, I'm going to talk about an offer exclusive to you that I really think you should take advantage of. Before I get to that, though, let's talk about what is happening right now in Ukraine and the Republican response to it. The propagandizing of the horrible situation on Russia's border, on Ukraine's border. It must be said that Vladimir Putin is a bad guy. He's no friend to the United States. It should go unsaid. He is an enemy. He is the leader of a hostile foreign power. That is not to say that the people of Russia are our enemies, not at all. But Vladimir Putin is. He is an autocrat. For someone to say that Russia is a democracy is laughable. It is not. The results of an election have no outcome, have no bearing on whether or not Vladimir Putin will remain in power. Vladimir Putin killed hundreds of people in an apartment bombing to gin up support for nationalism and keep him in, or to enter him into power in 1999. Hundreds of Russians were killed at the hands of Vladimir Putin. Over 1,000 were injured. These are facts. He has journalists killed if they oppose him or report things he does not like. Citizens disappear or are poisoned who oppose him. Gay and transgender Russians are oppressed. There are gay propaganda laws that outlaw the promotion of homosexuality among minors. It is an oppressive state. And if you listen to Republicans, though, Vladimir Putin, what a swell guy. What a genius, Donald Trump says. He's savvy. He's smart. We're going to get to it. Listen, we got several clips to get to. Stick around. It is bananas what is happening in the bizarro world of the party of book banning, the party that is opposed to teaching history. It is incredible what's happening right now across conservatism in the United States. Stick around for it, because there's a ton. Before we get to it, though, a word from today's sponsor, CuriosityStream. In the depths of the pandemic, I watched a lot of streaming TV. I don't know about you, but I really felt like I consumed everything of value, as well as far too many things of zero value whatsoever. Thankfully, just as I felt my eyes were about to permanently glaze over, I discovered CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service for those people who want to know more. Hailed as the Hulu for historians or Netflix for nerds, CuriosityStream offers thousands and thousands of documentaries and nonfiction releases, all available for less than $2 per month. So throw the streaming garbage out and go get your learn on. Head to curiositystream.com/Dollemore to save 25% off, which comes out to only $14.99 a year. Think of how much cheaper that is than most streaming services. You can't afford not to sign up. CuriosityStream features a huge spectrum of content, from documentaries on ancient insects to series about football. I personally love all the history titles, as well as anything that features David Attenborough. And all the content is available worldwide, so you don't have to worry about getting geo-blocked if you're in the remote part of Nepal. You can just continue watching that documentary about Nepal. CuriosityStream is also available on a ton of platforms: Roku, Android, Chromecast, Apple, and on and on and on. So you can use any device that you like. Join me and upgrade your streaming intake. Click the link below or go to curiositystream.com/Dollemore and save 25% right now on all the quality programming that you can handle. Let's begin with a tweet from Candace Owens. Keeping in mind that here's what I'm going to do. I'll tell you how the sausage is being made here. I'm going to show you some randos like Candace Owens. We're going to go to Tucker Carlson. We're going to go down the line all the way up into where Donald Trump. It culminates that why all of these dummies believe what they believe and say what they say is because they're taking their marching orders from Donald Trump. who was so confused last night on Laura Ingram's show. He thought that American troops were invading Ukraine. The smooth-brained rube, Donald Trump, has no understanding of what is happening. And they're taking their cues on how to believe about Russia from him. Let's begin with this tweet from Candace Owens from 2 days ago. I suggest every American who wants to know what's actually going on in Russia and Ukraine read this transcript of Putin's address. As I've said for months, NATO, under direction from the United States, is violating previous agreements and expanding eastward. We are at fault. We, meaning America. The United States of America is at fault for Russia invading Ukraine, which is going to cost them thousands of lives, if not the toppling of their democratic government. It is our fault, Candace Owens says. And if you want to know about what's going on, listen to Vladimir Putin. Read the transcript of the glorious dear leader's speech to know the truth. Which leads us to what the narrative is right now. Democrats bad. Vladimir Putin good. Up is down. Right is wrong. Bad is good. With Republicans. Watch this clip of Tucker Carlson really just laying it out.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Since the day that Donald Trump became president, Democrats in Washington have told you have a patriotic duty to hate Vladimir Putin. It's not a suggestion, it's a mandate. Anything less than hatred for Putin is treason. Many Americans have obeyed this directive. They now dutifully hate Vladimir Putin. Maybe you're one of them. Hating Putin has become the central purpose of America's foreign policy. It's the main thing that we talk about. Entire cable channels are now devoted to it. Very soon, that hatred of Vladimir Putin could bring the United States into a conflict in Eastern Europe. Before that happens, it might be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Has he shipped every middle-class job in my town to Russia? Did he manufacture a worldwide pandemic that wrecked my business and kept me indoors for 2 years? Is he teaching my children to embrace racial discrimination? Is he making fentanyl? Is he trying to snuff out Christianity? Does he eat dogs? These are fair questions, and the answer to all of them is no.
Does he eat dogs? Tucker, the man who looks like a dog, who's always confused by someone showing him a magic trick. There is reason to hate Vladimir Putin. There's certainly reason to be suspicious of Vladimir Putin. Again, the reasons I gave at the top of the video. Oppression of the gay population in Russia. Killing journalists. Poisoning citizens, opposition leaders. People just disappear if they aren't fans of Vladimir Putin in Russia. Invading a neighboring country that will result in thousands and thousands of deaths, which has already begun. Ukrainians have already fallen victim to the invasion and the incursion of Russia. But Tucker Carlson wants you to believe, it's the Democrats who want to call to get you fired because you disagree. What? And he's not the only one. Watch Steve Bannon, the bigot extraordinaire, with his bigot pal, Eric Prince, talking up Russia and maligning America because we aspire to be an open, accepting country, free from bigotry and oppression of others. Watch this.
And the reason that Putin ain't woke, he is anti-woke.
The Russians
people still know which bathroom to use.
They know how many genders are there in Russia?
2.
Okay, that's all of a sudden that's not they don't have the flags. They don't have the pride flags outside on their.
They don't have boys swimming in girls' college swim meets.
How backward!
It's embarrassing.
How savage! How medieval! How medieval! This is why this whole thing's a scam. It's a total and complete scam. And here's the beauty of it:
hatred on full display, bigotry on full display, while elevating Putin as a good and decent man. And why is he good and decent? Because his country oppresses transgender kids, hates gay pride flags. Gross. Moving on, again, with the narrative of Putin is good, America is bad. Putin good, Joe Biden is bad. Putin is grand, Democrats, scary and bad. Watch this clip from Newsmax that they're denying that the invasion is even taking place. And you may ask yourself, why would they deny something that the international media is covering? We're witnessing it happen because it's 2022 and there's cameras everywhere. But the reason they're denying it is because Joe Biden said it's happening, so it must not actually be happening.
Again, first we saw the personal lies, then we see the policy lies. Nothing we get from this administration is true. These are the reasons why I don't trust Joe Biden or anyone around him. This Russian invasion that they claim is well underway smells fishy to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I predicted Russia would take Ukraine with little bloodshed. I predicted Vladimir Putin would roll in just like he did in Crimea and declare it as his. Now, that could be what's happening right now. Team Biden tells us the Russian cyber attacks have increased against Ukraine. It would make sense. But have they increased? Where's the evidence? Guess what? We never get any evidence with Team Biden. Certainly not with COVID. We don't get evidence now surrounding Ukraine. Why? Because Vladimir Putin is playing Joe Biden for the rudderless fool that he is. President Trump knows what's behind Putin's moves.
Putin strong, Biden and Democrats weak. Russia strong, America meek and mild. All of this because Donald Trump has an obsequious fetish for the odor of Vladimir Putin's butthole. It's what it is. Donald Trump, for some reason, yet to be found out, maybe it never will, worships at the throne of Vladimir Putin. Therefore, Republicans do as well. Even as a substitute for loving their own country and the interests of their own country. Speaking of someone who should know the interests of the United States of America, the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who just on the 18th of February, just a few days ago, offered up an insane series of complimentary words for Vladimir Putin, calling him very shrewd and very capable. Says that he has enormous respect for the brutal killer, Vladimir Putin. Watch this.
Very capable. I have enormous respect for him. I've been criticized for saying that. No, I have enormous respect for him. He was also an interlocutor that was always well-informed and deeply clear about what Russian interests were. I appreciated that. It required the same from us, from me, from my team. We had to be equally prepared and equally protective of the interests that matter to the United States. He is very savvy, very shrewd. I never saw, that's not quite true. When I think about some of the things they do in the diplomatic space and some of the things they do in this space where they go off people, I think that's counterproductive. I shared that with him very directly. I said, you're trying to find a way to connect with us. I think those things just make it really hard for Western leaders to engage with you because it lights up all the human rights issues and the like. And I just don't think there's much game in it. And he would smile at me with a look that reminded me that's a tough world out there. And no, I consider him a elegantly sophisticated counterpart, and one who is not reckless, but has always done the math. And we may disagree with his priorities. We may disagree with his math. We certainly disagree that the interests that he seeks are reasonable for his country in many cases. But we should never underestimate that he is doing this in a way where he's exhibiting his capacity to control and his deep desire that his most important objective, and I should have listed this first, his most important objective is that he continues to run the deal.
Very shrewd, very capable, enormous respect for him. And then this dismissive attitude about talking about human rights, admitting that Vladimir Putin has people killed, his own citizenry, journalists in his country, seekers of truth. He has them offed. He has them disappear. He kills them, has them murdered. But there's not much game in that. Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, talking about having people, journalists, murdered, a game. Elegantly sophisticated, he calls him. An elegantly sophisticated counterpart. The murderer, mass murderer, usurper of human rights, Vladimir Putin. On Fox News, he called him a very talented statesman. He has a lot of gifts. He was a KGB agent, for goodness sakes. He knows how to use power. We should respect that. Quote, Mike Pompeo. And then, of course, this does indeed culminate with what we played yesterday. A very brief recap of Donald Trump just heaping praise upon the genius and the wonderful acts that are being taken on by Russia's peacekeeping forces. Russia's invading army is keeping the peace, according to Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Here he is from Buck Sexton and Clay Travis.
Yesterday, and there was a television screen, and I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful. So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There were more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace all right. No, but think of it. Here's a guy who's very savvy. I know him very well, very, very well. By the way, this never would have happened with us. Had I been in office, not even thinkable. This would never have happened. But here's a guy that says, I'm going to declare a big portion of Ukraine independent. He used the word independent. And we're going to go out and we're going to go in and we're going to help keep peace. You got to say that's pretty savvy. And you know what the response was from Biden? There was no response. They didn't have one for that. No, it's very sad.
And then we'll end with this. Here he is last night on Laura Ingraham's show. What an embarrassment. That this is the man whose lead they're taking on how to think about international relations related to Russia. This dopey goon who doesn't know that America isn't invading Russia with our own troops. Watch this harebrained, not a hair joke for Donald Trump, but I guess it works as one. Watch this moment from last night. Remarkable.
Monitor this, continue to monitor his statements. We'll go back to President Trump for a quick reaction. We had a kind of a really pathetic display from the Ukrainian President Zelensky earlier today, President Trump, where he, in Russian, he doesn't like to speak Russian, but in Russian, he was essentially imploring Vladimir Putin not to invade his country. Now we basically have the Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations looking like a defeated man. Your final reaction?
Well,
Well, I think the whole thing, again, would have never happened. It shouldn't happen. And it's a very sad thing. But you know what's also very dangerous is you told me about the amphibious attack by Americans. You shouldn't be saying that because you and everybody else shouldn't know about it. They should do that secretly, not be doing that through the great Laura Ingraham. They should be doing that secretly. Nobody should know that, Laura. And, you know,
that was the Russian. Those are the Russian amphibious landing.
No, I thought you said that. I thought you said that we were sending people in.
No, I did not. No. That would be news. That would be news.
All, and you know what? Hey, that's all we need. That'll be next. Okay. Now we ought to protect our own borders. You know, we ought to get to the southern border and start protecting the southern border.
That'll be next, says dopey Donald Trump, who Republicans have just surrendered their critical thinking skills to. What's Donald Trump think about this? Because that's what I want to believe. What's Vladimir Putin say about this? Because that is what I want to believe. What do you believe? What do you think? I'd love to know. You can call, leave me a brief voicemail, 714-576-4054. Email me, daily@dollemore.com. And listen, if I bring you some value, if I do something for you on a daily basis or a weekly basis, please consider supporting my work, helping produce what I do here. It is a time-intensive thing to comb through the vast reaches of the internet to find the stupidity of conservatives and Republicans. And I would appreciate your help. You can click the join button below this video. Become a channel member for as little as $1.99 a month, or you can go over to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. Both those are fantastic ways to help support and produce what I do here. You can also follow me on social media. Sound off there. I am at Dollemore just about everywhere. Thanks for your time and attention. Hope your thoughts and your support is with the Ukrainian people today, because they are indeed in need of it. When an outsized percentage of the American people believe the nonsense and the propaganda and the lies that germinate out of Russia and get puked onto the American people through Fox News and Newsmax and OAN and every other wacky conspiratorial propaganda network in the United States. I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Until I do, be genuine. Take care of one another.
I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors. And please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass. He said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Now for my break. Hello, this is Minister Gloria Lee from the Women of Courage show. I want you to prepare to vote. That is correct. I want you to make up in your mind, come hell or high water, that you will vote in every election that is held in the state of Michigan, regardless of how long the voting lines are and regardless of the weather. Your vote is important. That is why you need to take some water with you and a small stool to sit on. Your vote will determine the property tax we pay, the car insurance that we pay, the housing that is available for seniors, the schools our children will attend. Your vote will determine the number of new job openings, the number of hospitals and hotels in our city. Your vote will determine the policies at our universities and the police force. Never assume that your vote does not count. Voting is the most essential activity that you will ever participate in your life. People have died so you can vote. Elections comes down to voter turnout, so stand in line and make your vote count. I would like for you now to listen to a short speech by John Lewis on voting. Listen to what he has to say and note the passion in his voice.
The Democratic National Convention has gavelled into session on this day 3, beginning about an hour ago. Let's go straight to the floor, where veteran Georgia Congressman and civil rights pioneer John Lewis is speaking.
Or do you want to keep America moving forward? My dear friends, your vote is precious, almost sacred. It is the most powerful non-violent tool we have to create a more perfect union. Not too long ago, people stood in unmovable lines. They had to pass a so-called literacy test, pay a poll tax. On one occasion, a man was asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. On another occasion, one was asked to count the jelly beans in a jar, all to keep them from casting their ballot. Today, it is unbelievable that there are Republican officials are trying to stop some people from voting. They are changing the rules, cutting polling hours and imposing a requirement intended to suppress the vote. The Republican leader in the Pennsylvania House even bragged that his state's new voter ID law is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state. That's not right, that's not fair, and that is not just. And similar efforts have been made in Texas, Ohio, Florida, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, and South Carolina. I've seen this before. I lived this before. Too many people struggled, suffered, and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote. Together to ever turn back. So Democrats, we must not be silent. We must stand up, and speak out. We must march to the polls like never, ever before. We must come together and exercise our sacred right. And together, on November 6th, we will re-elect the man who will lead America forward, President Barack Obama.
This is Minister Gloria Lee. Last month, I put an ad in this paper asking the readers to go to the websites https://nisv.info and website https://touchedbythelight.us and download the booklet Black Women and Breast Cancer. Then send the PDF file to 5 other women, asking them to do the same. I got absolutely no replies to this request. So I'm submitting this short article to demonstrate the effect that death has on children, especially the death of their mother. Breast cancer must be fought all year long. For every woman murdered, there is probably a child left behind. That child will be raised by a relative or placed in foster care. If placed in foster care, the child languishes until adopted. Children who have lost their mothers due to murder do not always fare well, even if adopted. Parentless children suffer. How would you like to be told your mother was murdered because your father was angry and the court gave her custody of you? These children suffer from being left behind. It does not matter how many uncles, cousins, sisters, or brothers a child has. Nothing takes the place of a parent. The function of a parent is to give a child a feeling of security and placement. No individual can take the place of a parent. The parent is the rock for the attachment of a child. A parent is the child's strength. A child is able to say no when a parent is present. The child is able to make choices and negotiate when their parents are present. Their sovereignty is taken away from them when they are motherless. Parents are the resolution of life for children, and no child should be made to live without his or her mother. This nation apparently does not understand or does not want to understand the devastation visited upon society when the mother is missing from the home. Children need their mothers, and they should not have to suffer all their lives by having their mothers taken away from them. There has been enough posturing by politicians in this country for the past century. The problem of violence against women must be solved. Living without a mother is worse than living without food or water. Social scientists can design thousands of grieving programs for children who have lost their parents, but nothing will replace the pain and void a child feels in not being able to see his or her mother again. There was a man sitting in a bar during a fundraising event. When he learned money was being collected for a little girl because her mother was recently murdered, he openly wept in that bar. He said the child's life would never be the same. He knows because he had to live without his mother. Do you realize how powerful the pain was inside this man for him to weep openly in a bar? He was not only crying for that child, he was crying for himself. It will only take 5 minutes of your time to download the PDF file Black Women and Breast Cancer and send it to 5 friends. You could help save a life. Early detection of cancer is important. There are 2 major killers of Black women, murder and breast cancer. Women can be instrumental in saving women in both of these situations. Sticking your head in the sand and ignoring this problem is no solution. Standing up and facing the monsters confronting us is one solution. And for your information, sticking children in foster care leads to prostitution and prison. Our radio show deals with social issues. It will not hurt you to listen. Why? Because some of this information discussed may help save your life and the lives of your children or family members. There are monsters walking our streets, ladies, and we need to stand up and fight them.
Kenya and almost every African country was birthed by the ending of empire. Our borders were not of our own drawing. They were drawn in the distant colonial metropoles of London, Paris, and Lisbon, with no regard for the ancient nations that they cleaved apart. Today, across the border of every single African country live our countrymen with whom we share deep historical, cultural, and linguistic bonds. At independence, had we chosen to pursue states on the basis of ethnic, racial, or religious homogeneity, we would still be waging bloody wars these many decades later. Instead, we agreed that we would settle for the borders that we inherited, but we would still pursue continental political, economic, and legal integration. Rather than form nations that looked ever backwards into history with a dangerous nostalgia, we chose to look forward to a greatness none of our many nations and peoples had ever known. We chose to follow the rules of the Organization of African Unity and the United Nations Charter, not because our borders satisfied us, but because we wanted something greater, forged in peace. We believe that all states formed from empires that have collapsed or retreated have many peoples in them yearning for integration with peoples in neighboring states. This is normal and understandable. After all, who does not want to be joined to their brethren and to make common purpose with them? However, Kenya rejects such a yearning from being pursued by force. We must complete our recovery from the embers of dead empires in a way that does not plunge us back into new forms of domination and oppression. We rejected irredentism and expansionism on any basis, including racial, ethnic, religious, or cultural factors. We reject it again today.
This is Kenya's ambassador to the UN Security Council slamming Russia for invading Ukraine and falsely claiming to recognize two regions within the country as being independent states, as a pretense to then be able to send peacekeepers into those regions. And frankly, a representative from an African nation is one of the only people entitled to speak on this, given Africa's history of being divvied up by imperialist countries. Were they split according to the preferences of each individual ethnic group, racial group, religious group? Clearly not. But if each of those groups pursued states unto themselves, they'd be embroiled in conflict to this day. And so they made the conscious decision to avoid that conflict. Just like it's clear that Vladimir Putin clearly isn't pleased about the fall of the Soviet Union, he called it the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, but that doesn't entitle him to start invading and collecting sovereign nations. His delusions of grandeur shouldn't be Ukraine's problem, nor any other country's problem. And that should be clear. Most of the world is united in decrying the actions of the Kremlin. NATO is united, and President Biden today announced sanctions targeting Russia.
So today, I'm announcing the first tranche of sanctions to impose costs on Russia in response to their actions yesterday. These have been closely coordinated with our allies and partners and will continue to escalate sanctions if Russia escalates. We're implementing full blocking sanctions on two large Russian financial institutions, VEB and their military bank. We're implementing comprehensive sanctions on Russian sovereign debt. That means we've cut off Russia's government from Western financing. It can no longer raise money from the West and cannot trade in its new debt on our markets or European markets either. Starting tomorrow and continuing in the days ahead, we'll also impose sanctions on Russia's elites and their family members. They share in the corrupt gains of the Kremlin policies and should share in the pain as well. And because of Russia's actions, we've worked with Germany to ensure Nord Stream 2 will not, as I promised, will not move forward. As Russia contemplates its next move, we have our next move prepared as well. Russia will pay an even steeper price if it continues its aggression, including additional sanctions. The United States will continue to provide defensive assistance to Ukraine in the meantime, and will continue to reinforce and reassure our NATO allies.
Which is exactly what we should be doing, increasing the pressure economically to show the Kremlin that there are consequences to warmongering and invading sovereign countries. This is a move that's being celebrated among democracies across the globe, and yet there is, of course, one group that doesn't share this view, the Republicans right here in the United States. Why? Because they're on the side of the warmongering autocrat and gave up on even pretending that they have any respect for the concept of democracy. Here's Tucker Carlson, who at this point doles out marching orders to nearly the entire GOP, giving the whole game away and trying to convince everyone that there's no difference between Ukraine, a democracy, and Russia, not a democracy.
Wait a second, why is it disloyal to side with Russia, but loyal to side with Ukraine? They're both foreign countries that don't care anything about the United States. Kind of strange.
Right, because other than the whole being led by a democratically elected leader versus being led by a dictator thing, no difference at all. Got it. And just to be clear, this is the line that's being towed all the way up to the top in the GOP. Trump himself called Putin's move genius, saying, quote, "Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. We could use it on our southern border." In other words, Donald Trump looked at an autocrat invading a sovereign nation and thought to himself, that could be me. But please, tell me again how Republicans are some defenders of the Constitution. I could use a good laugh. And there are two reasons why Republicans are doing this. The first is because Joe Biden supports Ukraine. Every democracy supports Ukraine. But because Joe Biden is on one side of this, the correct side, well, Republicans have to be on the other side because they stand for nothing other than obstructing the Democrats. Which was always the case, by the way, but at least now we don't have to sit idly by and listen to them pretend to grandstand about states' rights and fiscal responsibility and adherence to the Constitution. Now they just wait and see where Democrats stand, and then they do the opposite. Biden could find a cure for cancer, and Republicans would figure out a way to oppose it. And the second reason is that they support Russia because Russia supports Republicans. They're not only bedfellows, they are reliant on each other. Think about what Trump, the leader of the Republican Party, did for Putin when he was in office. He undermined NATO, he reduced forces in Europe, suggested that Russia could keep Crimea, his campaign gave Russians classified intelligence, he softened the GOP platform on Ukraine, held up javelins until he could extort Zelensky for dirt on Joe Biden, claimed Russia didn't interfere in our elections, and he said he believes Russia over US intelligence agencies. And in exchange, Russia launched a disinformation campaign intended expressly to help Trump in the election, knowing full well that he'd be as useful as he ultimately proved to be. In other words, Trump was willing to upend precedent in our alliances because it benefited himself personally. This is, per usual, about one autocrat's desperation to help another autocrat dismantle not only our own democracy here at home, but the very notion of democracy across the globe. So I get that Republicans will try to make this confusing, they'll try to politicize it the way they politicize masks and vaccines and any other cut and dry issue, but behind all of the obfuscation, here's what it boils down to. You are either for democracy or you're against it. And the Republicans are making sure you know where they stand. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi, I decided that at the end of every show for the next year, I would share excerpts from a book that I believe would enhance your life and make you a stronger thinker and problem solver. All characteristics that will help you win at life and raise stronger and healthy children. Many of you turn your nose up at reading, or you snub the advice that you must read in life to succeed, or you compare the cost of a book to getting a new pair of shoes or getting your hair done or your nails done. The reason why you make these cost comparisons is because you do not truly value a book. A book is a magnificent instrument that can change the course of your life and the lives of your children. In later shows, I plan to discuss with you how a book changed the lives of certain people. I understand that you do not earn a lot of money, and this money is valuable to you because of all the things you see advertised that you desire, and you do not want to spend a lot of money on a book. A new pair of shoes is more valuable to you than a book. If you truly cannot afford a book, then you need to go to the library and take your children with you for a day of reading. You must gird your loins and proceed at educating yourself. Some of you seem to think that having a conversation with your stupid girlfriend or your stupid boyfriend will help you more than reading a book, when actually having a conversation with your loudmouth girlfriend or loudmouth boyfriend is merely a cathartic, allowing you to blow off steam.
Reasons to read You Are the Prophet of Your Life. 1. This book is not just for Christians. This book is good for people of all religions or even lacking religion. As said on the About page of the book, you don't have to believe in God to read scriptures. Reading the scriptures can help liberate you from negative thinking. In this book, we see how this is true and can learn to fight against this negative thinking ourselves. 2. This book is a great book for feminists. This book talks about the struggles of women put in hard situations. Although it is not recommended for survivors of violence, it is a great reminder of how the world can be to those of us who have been more privileged and lucky. This book shows us the lives of fellow women who've had it tough. It reminds us to be grateful for our fortune and reminds us how this world needs to change. Once we have that in our heads, all of us women can stand together and make the changes needed to better the lives of all women, hopefully forever. 3. This book helps us break away from negative thinking. Negative thinking is what keeps us away from our true potential. If we don't think we can do something, often we won't. The author of this book herself mentioned in her introduction that she almost didn't go through with writing the book because 3 men told her that no one would read it. If we instead believe in ourselves, we can reach our full potential. We can write that book or start that hobby. 4. This book reminds us to stick to our morals. No matter what you believe in something. Something or someone is right and the other is wrong. There are nuances, but you have created those nuances with your beliefs too. The author of this book is clear and strong beliefs and feelings when it comes to what one should and should not do. Even if we as readers do not agree with this, we can be inspired by her intensity. We can learn how to be as strong in our beliefs as well and stand up for the changes we want to happen. 5. This book helps us question the society we are a part of. This book points a critical finger and magnifying glass at our society. It shows us how men and women each fail in our lives and our society. We can see how the author is skeptical of our society, and we can become skeptical ourselves. This is not a bad thing. This keeps us from blindly following something that may or may not match our values and morals. 6. This book helps us take a deeper look into our emotions. You Are the Prophet of Your Life shows us how our emotions affect our actions and how these emotions can get in the way. If we are too loose with how we feel, we can make decisions we will later regret. However, if we are too strong, we can't let in love of anyone, including God. This book helps us check on our emotions by hearing the stories of others. 7. Reading itself is great. Reading is fun. It can also help us better our lives and increase our knowledge of many topics. 8. This book reminds us that we are to be judged by our actions and words. We are what we do and say. We are to be judged on that and not anything else. Just because we describe ourselves as a specific type of person like Christian or atheist, that doesn't make anyone better or worse than the other. The superiority comes from what you do with the life, time, and opportunities we are provided. 9. This book makes you feel. This book uses the second-person point of view of you. This keeps us in the headspace of those to who the author is writing. It makes you feel like the author is talking directly to you, reaching into your soul and letting you know right and wrong. 10. The book provides actual biblical quotes. Actual biblical quotes show you the more direct words of God, which can help religious individuals in their worship and personal relationship with God. It can also help us understand the reasoning behind the author's beliefs and gives her some more authority on each topic. As well, even if you are not religious, you can recognize the historical significance of the text and understand that they are coming from a place of hoping for a more moral world. You should visit touchedbythelight.us and
Congressman John Lewis is a living legend and an icon of the civil rights movement. A central focus of Lewis's activism has been the fight for the right to vote, a right that until 1965, generations of African Americans had been denied.
When John Lewis was a teenager, he read in a comic book about what Dr. King had been doing in Montgomery. And he went to his parents and he says, I want to be part of this.
By 1963, John Lewis had helped organize demonstrations and sit-ins across the South. When he was elected chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that same year, he became one of the Big Six leaders of the civil rights movement and helped plan the March on Washington. At age 23, Lewis was the youngest person to speak at the event. But his most defining moment came 2 years later, when he turned his attention to voting rights and helped lead a dangerous civil rights march from Selma to Montgomery.
John Lewis was on the front lines of the 50-mile march, starting in Selma to Montgomery, demonstrating the murder of Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young African-American who was killed by a state trooper, but also the denial of African-Americans' right to vote across the South. If they could get the nation to zero in on Selma, Alabama, a place that had a large black population and very few African-Americans who were registered to vote, then perhaps there could be some action.
As activists marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, state troopers tear-gassed and beat them on what came to be known as Bloody Sunday. Lewis himself was severely beaten, suffering a fractured skull. 8 days after Bloody Sunday, President Lyndon Baines Johnson introduced the Voting Rights Act in Congress, and he would sign it into law in August 1965.
Today, we strike away the last major shackle of those fierce and ancient bonds.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was written on the road from Selma to Montgomery. The government responded and reacted to the power of the people.
John Lewis has helped secure the right to vote for millions of Americans. He's been on the front lines of the fight for civil rights for over 50 years. And the last time I checked, he was still fighting.
Too many people struggled, suffered, and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote. And we have come too far together to ever turn back. We must stand up, and speak out.
One moment in time can change everything in your life. When you agreed to purchase the books The Prayer Jar and The Woman I Want to Be to help save someone's life, you are actually helping yourself. No one knows when they will be diagnosed with breast cancer. So help yourself and others by purchasing a book at the WHPR Studios at 160 Victor Street in Highland Park, Michigan. We thank you for your support. The proceeds will help us in our year-long campaign.
Thank you for listening to Women of Courage, and have a great day.